Hey everybody. So now that there's a ceasefire in Gaza and the hostages are starting to get released, Gazans are starting to go back to their homes. And there's now many articles about what they're seeing. And there's many pictures, very dramatic pictures of the destruction that they're coming back to at their homes and in their neighborhoods and in their streets. And so there's an article in the Wall Street Journal, for instance, this past week. Gazans survey damage after ceasefire deal. When a ceasefire took effect in Gaza earlier this month, Ibrahim Rabbi went back to Jabalia to see what had become of his home. And they quote him, "I was shocked by what I saw. The whole area is destroyed. The apartment building that housed his extended family had been reduced to rubble," he said, "and the small coffee shop he ran was badly damaged and filled with sand. Entire neighborhoods have been flattened," it goes on to say. In parts of Jabalia, the landscape was so strewn with debris that it was difficult to find a place to pitch a tent, residents seeking to return said. It also goes on to say in the area north of Gaza City that includes Jabalia, 74.2% of buildings likely have been damaged or destroyed, and they're comparing it to World War II, to Germany and Japan. And obviously these articles are going to elicit a lot of sympathy, and the question is, do we feel any sympathy? Further, should we perhaps even feel joy at the destruction of our enemy? So the Gemara this past week actually touched on that idea about feeling joy at the downfall of our enemy. And it's a famous Gemara, shows up in a couple places, and it says, the context is they're talking to, in Sanhedrin, they're addressing the witnesses. And they're concerned maybe the witnesses will be reluctant to offer testimony that will lead to the death penalty or the destruction of an individual. They'll be hesitant to do that. And so, because they'll say, why would we want to be responsible for the blood of this person? So they answer him, you should be aware that it says in Proverbs, there's a pasuk that says in Proverbs, Ba'oved Risha'im Rina, when the wicked perish, there is song. They try to tell these witnesses, don't worry about it, because when the wicked are destroyed, there is song. It's a good thing. We sing about that. But then the Gemara brings that famous medrash that you may have heard of before, that says that at the Kriyat Yamsuf, at the splitting of the sea, when the Egyptians were drowning, Ba'ot HaSha'ah, at that moment, Bikshu Malachei HaSharet, the angels sought to sing a song before God. And God said to them, Ma'aseh Yadai Tovin, my handiwork is drowning, Bayam, in the ocean, in the waters there. V'atem omrim shira lefanai, and you're trying to sing a song before me? Like he told them to be quiet. This isn't a time for singing. So there's a bit of contradiction over here between this pasuk, this verse from Proverbs, from Mishlei, from King Solomon, that we rejoice at the downfall of the evil, but then we have this medrash. And then the answers the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina said, God, who enosas, he's not happy about it. Aval acheri masis, but others can rejoice. You see, God and the angels don't live in a world of good versus evil. They're above all that. God created all that. The angels don't have free choice. They don't have to fight against evil. And so therefore it's not their place to rejoice at the destruction of God's creation. And God obviously would prefer not that to happen. We, however, who would be their victims, we have a different take. And that's why our perspective is, yeah, we're happy with the destruction of the evil. Now, when it comes to should we feel any sympathy, in this article they do manage to get around to some facts over here, such as multiple rounds of fighting in and around Jabalia have been especially intense, with Israel using airstrikes, armor, and infantry to attack Hamas militants and what is described as their extensive underground system of tunnels, weapons, weapon depots, and other infrastructure. And the military said about its operation in Jabalia against Hamas northern Gaza terrorist infrastructure and operatives who have systematically exploited civilian centers. We know in certain cases, entire neighborhoods in the Gaza Strip are converted into combat complexes, which are utilized for ambushes, housing command and control centers, weapon warehouses, combat tunnels, observation points, firing positions, booby-trapped houses, and for setting explosives in the streets. I don't have any sympathy for all the destruction that went on there for a number of factors. Number one, the people of Gaza voted for Hamas. They knew what they stood for. They stand for the destruction of Israel and for Jews all over the world. And they voted for them. So they knew who they were voting for and what they were siding with. That's number one. Number two, Hamas and all the population, as it was pointed out, they built their tunnels, their protection around civilians, underneath schools, underneath hospitals, underneath mosques, underneath homes. It's extensive. And number three, when all those Hamas terrorists started pouring into Israel through those broken fences and into the kibbutzim, it wasn't just Hamas terrorist soldiers. It was whoever was around jumped on the bandwagon and committed those horrible acts of violence against men, women, children, and elderly. Their children jumped in, their women joined in, their elderly joined in. And they wanted to see that to go be destroyed, see all of Israel destroyed. So do I feel an ounce of sympathy from these articles? And there'll be more, and they'll show pictures as more and more comes out of the utter destruction. Do I feel an ounce of sympathy? Should you? No, none whatsoever. God can feel bad for the downfall and the destruction of his creations. The angels don't sing songs about that. But we, the Proverbs, it says, Ba'avod Risha'im Rina, with the destruction of evil, there is song, there is goodness, there is a rejoicing, and is there sympathy? I'm afraid not. You made your bed, you sleep in it. Have a good Shabbat.